Bonjour Barbara.
Bonjour Anan.
Vous allez bien?
Ça va, merci.
Bonjour Good morning, Barbara.
Hey.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. How was the weekend?
Good. Très bien.
Oh, great. Barbara, if I ask you, what's your best therapy for a cold? What would that be?
De l'eau chaude, du citron, et puis écouter la chronique culture.
Citron?
Hot water, lemon, and listen to the chronique.
Okay.
Very good one.
So let's have the first one, the chronique first, and then I can have the third one. Yes.
Alors aujourd'hui, une fois n'est pas coutume.
Today, for once, we will start with politics. A few days ago, French President Emmanuel Macron toured several African countries. Well, that's not really what interests us. What caught our attention is what he said during his speech in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Le patrimoine africain.
African heritage must be highlighted in Paris, but also in Dakar, Lagos, and Cotonou. It will be one of my priorities. I want that in the next 5 years, conditions are united for temporary or definitive restitutions of African heritage to Africa.
This statement is important for culture in Africa. Why? Well, because many countries have seen their art pieces looted and stolen during wars, archaeological searches, but mainly during the colonial era. And today, these items are often found on the art market or in museums around the world, such as the British Museum in London or the Kay Brownlee Museum in Paris, France. Some countries have asked for the return of these items. You can see some of them on your screens. This is the case of Nigeria, which asked England to return some items stolen by British settlers. The request was not granted. In 2016, Benin asked France to return nearly 6,000 objects that were looted by the French colonial army, but also by Christian missionaries who assumed that these objects were fictititious. The request was also not granted. Unfortunately, many of these African countries don't see the value of these ancient objects.
This heritage is our history, and Africa has been dispossessed of its heritage. France colonized us, and they stole objects that made the pride of our history and the greatness of our history. They have to give them back to us so we can retake control of our history. They are a testimony of our civilization, this glorious past that was erased by colonization. It will allow the younger generations to have access to these art pieces that will tell something about their past. So it's very important, because for people to understand who they are, where they come from, they need those ancient art pieces.
Quite often, these Western museums argue that what hinders them to return these objects to their countries of origin is that they may be kept in bad conditions and might be stolen.
People who think we are not big enough to maintain our heritage, it's not their business. It's not their problem. We will not deny the fact that most African states do not make efforts for their heritage. But it's our concern. We are adults, we are sovereign states, we are independent. We preserve our heritage if we wish and as we wish. They cannot say, we won't give you back those objects.
Each country wants to strengthen its cultural identity, and art plays an important role to this end. We continue to keep an eye on this situation and see how things turn out. We hope Emmanuel Macron's statements will turn things around. We move to photography with a series of photos that puts traditional African masks in the spotlight. Let me first explain the idea behind this project. It came about following a meeting between two African Americans. One is a collector of African art, and the other is a photographer who is interested in DNA tests that allow Black Americans to trace their African origins. The models on the photos are Black Americans who took those famous DNA tests to find out the African countries their ancestors came from. So on these pictures, each of them wears a mask that comes from the African country where their ancestors come from. The series is called They Still Live, in tribute to their ancestors and their African heritage. This is a project of a photographer, Thomas Evans. It's an artistic way of saying that one should never forget their roots. That's all for the culture segment today.
Au revoir.